Hi guys, so this is to make you understand the difference between HTTP and HTTP 2.0. So as internet is evolving, HTTP is also evolving. So before we had HTTP 1.0, now we have it has evolved into 2.0. Not everywhere, but it's constantly evolving. So the difference basically is very simple, all right? So let's say this is my client. So let's say this is my I'll type here my client and let's say this is my server, all right? So so normally what happens is that when the client is trying to load a client is trying to load a website, so what happens is that a request go to the server, right? So request go to the server. Now the request, for example, the first request will be probably, so the first request is always, the first request is, for example, let's say index.html. Sorry, I'm using a free board, that's why. So let's say the first request is index.html. And now once the request is there, what's going to happen? Now the server is going to respond back with the index.html. Now let's say, but to load a whole website, index.html is not enough. So now let's say the client is going to, the next request is going to go for CSS. All right. So next, say the next request is going to go for images. All right. So the next request is going to go for the footer files. Well, now let's say each request, now each of them server has to respond individually back, right? So this is how it goes. So normally what happens is that it's not a big problem if the server is somewhere near. For example, now let's say the server you're requesting, this has been requested and the server is pretty far away, maybe other part of the world. So there is request loop, right? Go back, go back, go back. So this process makes the website load very slow. Probably you might have seen in the mobile devices when you're trying to load a website. So what happens is that first some page load, then some little bit remaining of the page loads, then remaining loads. So this is how it basically happens, all right? So this is in the TCP protocol. So according to the TCP protocol, first the index HTML will be fetched, then the next will be fetched, and the next will be fetched. So each is a go-around loop, all right? So now when it comes to the HTTP 2.0, it's pretty straight simple. Now the first request goes as a part of, for example, now let's say here again index.html. Now with this request itself, again goes the CSS files, then goes the request for the images, all right? So in the same loop, the server returns back. The server returns back the same everything. So for everything required to load a certain web page, all right? Now here, the funny part or the very interesting part is that, see, the server already knows, for example, this particular server, the server already knows in order to load a proper website, you need an index HTML, you need a JS, CSS, you need a JavaScript. So the server already knows you need all this. Still, the server sends one by one by one. So when it comes to the HTML2 part, so here they have introduced something called as server push. All right. So in the server push, even though, for example, the person is requesting, so sorry, so even though the person, server push is gone from here. All right. So even though the server client is requesting index.html, the server also sends along with it CSS, also send along with JavaScript, also send along with it the images. All right. So this process makes it more efficient, and especially when to decrease the load time of the website. All right. So if you're using CDN, so we discussed in the previous videos regarding the CDN, that's the content delivery networks. See, if you're using the CDN, still this HTTP 1.0 is not a big issue, because wherever you are, the nearest server has the cache information, it fetches from there. But when you go for the normal without CDN, so your website take a lot of time to load when you go for HTTP 1. Because why? Because go around loop. So first has to be, each is a separate request, right? So each is a TCP separate request. So this is the main reason basically. So that's the difference between HTTP 1.0 and 2.0. So it depends on your hosting, which hosting you use. For example, if you use A2 hosting and everything, so you're already in HTTP 2.0. All right. So just let your developer know that you want to use HTTP 2.0. Okay. That's very simple.